All right, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors for May 14th. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Williams? Is Mr. Williams in Santa Barbara?
He's there.
Mr. Hart?
I'm here.
Ms. Hartman?
Here.
Mr. Adam? I am here. Mr. Lavanino?
Here. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the May 7th meeting?
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Oh, we got to do a roll call.
Mr. Williams?
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair.
That's okay.
Aye.
Mr. Hart? Yes. Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mr. Adam? Here. Chair Lavanino?
Aye. All right. Do we happen to have a CEO's report today?
No report.
No report. Okay, that takes us to
our resolutions to be presented. Can I get a motion to approve our resolutions A1 through A3?
So moved.
Oh, A1 through A2. Okay.
So moved.
Moved. And seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mr. Adam? Chair Lavanino?
Aye. Okay, that takes us to A1. Madam Clerk, can you read that into the record, please?
Chair Lavanino and members of the board, administrative item number 1 is sponsored by Supervisor Lavanino. It is to adopt a resolution proclaiming the month of May 2019 as Transitions Mental Health Association Month in Santa Barbara County. And if I can have Jill Bolster-White, the Executive Director, to the podium, and anyone you would like to join you this morning. Thank you. Whereas 2019 marks the 40th anniversary of Transitions Mental Health Association, TMHA, providing mental health services on the Central Coast. And whereas TMHA is dedicated to eliminating stigma and promoting recovery and wellness for people with mental illness through work, housing, community, and family support services. And whereas TMHA provides services to over 4,000 individuals and family members in the region annually. And whereas TMHA has successfully operated programs like Growing Grounds Farm of Santa Maria, the Recovery Learning Communities of Lompoc and Santa Maria Supported Community Services, Lompoc Act, Partners of Hope, Supported Employment, the High School Program, and continuous outreach education on mental health, all of which have a positive impact on our North Santa Barbara communities. And whereas TMHA continues to guide the conversation around issues of mental health and the acceptance of mental illness as a treatable condition. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the month of May 2019 as not only National Mental Health Month, but Transitions Mental Health Association Month in honor of 40 years of service to the Central Coast region, passed and adopted today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Jill Bolster-White. I'm the Executive Director of Transitions Mental Health Association, and I've actually been part of the organization for 29 of those 40 years, if you can believe it. I was very young when I started. But I thank Chair Lavanino and the board for this recognition. It is really exciting to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, as was mentioned, and we've been really delighted to be partners with Santa Barbara County for many, many of those years. As I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Myrna McMillan was the one who reached out to me to talk about initiating services here in North County. So for 40 years, Transitions Mental Health Association has been working to help people with mental health diagnoses work towards recovery in various ways. And we also add value by working closely with Hancock College. We've done outreach and education to high school students locally. We have a project that teaches folks who have mental illness to advocate for themselves in the healthcare setting. And we also have another grant project that works with people who are primarily Spanish speaking, who have a mental health diagnosis, and who are interested in working in the healthcare field. So we're really delighted to be close partners with the county, but also add value through foundation and philanthropic efforts to do this very, very important work. I thank you for the recognition.
Thank you very much. All right, that takes us to item A2.
Yes, Chair Lavanino and members of the board, administrative item number 2 is sponsored by Supervisor Lavanino. It is to adopt a resolution of commendation honoring Eric Pinedo Tovar as the 2019 California Coastal Area Council Youth of the Year. And is Eric Pinedo Tovar in the audience today? I believe he might have gotten.
Okay, well, he does not get the special attendance award.
But I can go ahead and read the
Let's read it into the record.
Whereas Eric is a junior at Pioneer Valley High School, where he has been an active participant in Keystone Club, a teen group dedicated to leadership, skill building, and community service. And whereas Eric has completed over 500 hours of community service and is passionate about helping others, especially younger club members who often look to him for advice and inspiration. And whereas Eric inspires his peers through leadership by example, excelling at academics while living a healthy lifestyle. And whereas Eric will go on to contend for the State of California Youth of the Year title and a $5,000 college scholarship from Boys and Girls Clubs of America. Now therefore be it hereby ordered and resolved that this Board of Supervisors joins the community in honoring Eric Pinito Tovar as the 72nd Youth of the Year, awarded by Boys and Girls Club Coastal Area Council, passed and adopted today.
Well, I'm sure Eric is at school where he should be and doing very well. So we wish him the best. Especially a $5,000 scholarship would be very nice. Okay, that takes us to the balance of the A agenda. Do the members of the board have any items that they wish to pull? No? Are there Supervisor Williams?
None to pull,
None.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Are there any items from the public?
Chair Lavanino and members of the board, I have one request to speak on item A8.
A8. Okay, let's read that into the record.
Chair Lavanino and members of the board, administrative item number 8 is from General Services, Public Works, Board of Directors, Flood Control, and Water Conservation District. It is to consider recommendations regarding the acquisition of 640 Randall Road by the Santa Barbara County Flood Control and Water Conservation District for flood control purposes, APN 7120036, and this is in the 1st District.
Good morning.
And we have Andy Caldwell as our public comment this morning.
Thank you, Chairman Lavanino, members of the board, Andy Caldwell representing CoLab. I don't know if you newer board members have noticed, but I haven't criticized the Public Works Department or flood control in probably 25 years because they always have a reason for what they're doing. So I'm not here to criticize this action, but to call your attention, since otherwise it would not have been read. I can't recall the flood control district ever having to spend $4 million to buy 1 acre that has a house on it for flood control purposes. And I don't know why the property is still worth $4 million. Now I know a vacant lot in Montecito can go for over $1 million, but I don't know why the house is still worth that much over and above the lot value when in fact I don't think it's inhabitable right now. I also don't know how many more properties they may have to buy like this and how much money will be left when we're all said and done. And so I think this is concerning in terms of spending $4 million for 1 acre, and then the question is what happens to the house? And I thought that was worthy of your discussion, not because I'm second guessing them, but because, like I said, you're going to run out of money sooner rather than later if you're doing that just for land acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we
I'm
will.
happy to answer some of that if flood
Okay.
control isn't sitting there.
They are here. I don't know if Mr. Fayram, would you care to respond? This was something we did have quite a bit of discussion on.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, well, on a couple of points. First, the overall Randall Road project involves hopefully ultimately 8 parcels. This is the only one with a house on it. And just as a side note, I mentioned to Mr. Caldwell before, I did get a call from a neighbor who, if we ended up buying this and would otherwise remove the home, I mean, we have to buy the house with the structure because that's where the basin has to go. But there's a possibility that there might be interest for someone to actually come in and go pick up the home and move it off to another property. And so that would be ideal if we could do that. That's not a done deal, but we would certainly explore those options.
And the house is intact.
House is intact,
yeah.
yes.
And according to the flood maps, is actually inhabitable.
It's habitable, but it is in a high hazard zone.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. Supervisor Adam.
And this is all out of South Coast Flood Zone money?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Adam, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. Very good. Seeing no other questions on the
Mr.
balance-
Chair,
Oh, Supervisor Williams, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just add that I think it's important to note that even though that our general services folks do due diligence, and this was considered below market value, not above.
Okay. Seeing no other lights on, can I get a motion to move the balance of the administrative agenda?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Hart? Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mr. Adam? Chair Lavanino?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, very good. That takes us to our public comment. How many requests to speak do we have?
Chair Lavanino and members of the board, we have 4 requests to speak on general public comment today. And we are staying in Santa Maria and with Elizabeth Schneider, to be followed by Verana Saavedra.
Good morning, your board. My name is Beth Schneider, and I live in Santa Maria. I'm here today to show my support for the more than 2,000 IHSS providers who serve Santa Barbara County's most vulnerable elderly, disabled, and sick women and men. Through the hard work of the IHSS providers, there are multiple benefits to fully funding this program. Recipients receive high-quality care. The local economy is stimulated with an influx of revenue generated by our IHSS caregivers' local spending, and the burdens and financial pressures on first responders, doctors, hospitals, and other emergency services are reduced. As a retired county social services director in San Luis Obispo, IHSS is a cost-effective program that allows eligible Californians to receive high-quality care in their own homes as compared to more costly institutional settings. IHSS allows recipients to live their best quality, dignified life without being forced into a more expensive alternative for your board and Santa Barbara County. To refresh your memories, Santa Barbara County benefits greatly from investing in IHSS. Research verifies that every dollar invested in IHSS by the county, $5.26 are matched by the state and federal governments. Over time, that equates to a 425% return on investment. The United Domestic Workers, UDW members, and their clients rely on the In-Home Supportive Services program. Today, your constituents will share some of their unique experiences with IHS and how you, their elected representatives, can positively impact recipients and providers' lives. These UDW providers, your constituents, deserve a living wage and benefits. Please invest in the IHSS program for greater savings in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Viriana Saavedra, to be followed by Lawanda Leons Pruitt.
Good morning, board. It's such a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Viviana Saavedra, and I'm also here in behalf of my union. I am a very proud member of UDW number 3930. If you've never been to our offices, they're located on the corner of Cook and Miller right here in Santa Maria. And I'm here with some of my fellow co-workers because bargaining, we're in bargaining now. We're not here to talk about specifics, but I am here to talk about 2 things. One is I enjoy bargaining periods, which other people may not. One of the reasons is we need to highlight the importance of this IHSS program and the caregivers who provide the care for the very indigent, the very poor, those who are disabled, and unfortunately, those of us who are contracting that terrible disease of old age. And there are more and more of us. I'm a baby boomer, and there are many more out there, people who are getting to the age where we need extra help around the house in order to stay in our homes. Now, I am a caregiver. That means I'm a frontline worker. I always like to mention that this is legitimate work. Yeah. We do things that are low level, that people consider to be grunt work. I clean toilets, as do many of my caregivers. All right, we clean toilets. Why do we do that? Because the home for the person we care for needs to be tidy and clean. Now, take the other end of it. I also discuss saturation levels with my daughter's doctor, with her lung specialist, with those people who have a higher level of care, provide a higher level of care for my daughter. But we're in the whole picture here. As frontline workers, we really need to make sure, one, the program stays healthy. It's not going away. It's going to be here for decades to come. And secondly, that we remember in-home caregivers need to be treated with respect. One of the ways we do that is we give them a pay raise, right? $12.10 an hour, and we just got that extra 10 cents this year, is not enough to live on. Many of us left good-paying jobs to take care of our folks. And that also means that we need to contribute to the economy in some way. We need to have more pay. That's the first thing. The second thing is benefits. like every other worker. We need to have the benefits that give us a better quality of life. Vision, for example, dental. I'm asking you and specifically to look at what we're bringing to the table. What are we asking for? It is not unreasonable for us to, as a worker in the county, again, remember, we save taxpayers 4 times the cost of putting them into a rest home or a convalescent home. We save a lot of money for the county and the state. So it's important to look at the investment you're making. You're getting a lot back for the work that we provide. Again, as frontline workers, we need to make sure that we are bringing qualified people into the business. We can't do that without a pay raise. We can't do that without benefits. You know, when I'm across the county line and I'm doing a presentation, I'm always jealous because in San Luis, they have vision benefits provided by the county. So we should be doing the same, if not more. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lawanda Leons Pruitt, to be followed by Andy Caldwell, who is our final speaker.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, it's been a few years since I've been here. My name is Lawanda Lyons Pruitt. I represent the Santa Maria Lompoc branch of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I am also a retired county employee, and I'm happy to say that I was employed for Santa Barbara County for over 37 years, having worked for 5 years with the Department of Social Services, and then 32 plus years with Santa Barbara County Public Defender's Office, where I retired as the chief investigator. And one reason that I stayed for so long, I enjoyed my job. Another reason I stayed is because every year when I got my evaluation, I knew that you all were going to reward me with a cost of living for my hard work. And you showed me that you valued me and that you appreciated me by giving me that cost of living increase. And I thank you. We know that caregiving is hard work, and recipients, they're allowed to stay in their home and they receive high quality care while they're in their homes. We know that things are continuing to increase. I just got a COLA, but all of it is probably going to be going to the cable bill if I don't fight it. Rents in this area are averaging between $1,800 and $2,000 a month. Home care workers cannot sustain on $12.10 an hour. You need to show that you appreciate them with the cost of living increase, and also by granting them dental and vision benefits. Thank you so much for your time, and it's good to see everyone today. Thank you.
And our final speaker is Andy Caldwell.
Chairman Lavanino, members of the board, Andy Caldwell representing CoLab. I want to talk with you a little bit about the proposed Lompoc wind energy plant. The project includes constructing 30 wind turbines, 492 feet tall, with a span of 450 feet across, which is larger than a 747. It will impact 3,000 acres of farm ground. They will need to move nearly 1 million cubic feet of dirt. They will have to take out over 600 oak trees, and it will generate 16,000 construction trips and require upwards of 400 tons of steel per tower. And this is what we call green energy. There's something worse than all that. And I've been doing shows on this for 10 or 15 years. Wind turbines, even if a bat doesn't fly into them, the vibrations kill bats. And one bat can consume between 500 and 1,000 mosquitoes in 1 hour, or 6,000 per night. Wind turbines kill 1 million bats per year in the United States alone, which represents literally tens of billions of mosquitoes that are going to get a reprieve in life, plus hundreds of thousands of birds, including endangered species. And I'm bringing this up. We're not against wind power per se, but it's got some serious drawbacks, including the cradle to grave impacts of what it takes to mine the ore, make the steel, fabricate the stuff, erect it, and then the toll on the ecology once they're erected. And the other thing, they have to be spaced. It takes 3,000 acres because they have to be spaced or they interfere with one another. And usually in windy areas where they operate, that's also places where birds fly through that area because of the updrafts. And I've always felt, for a long time now, that you look at oil and gas or nuclear, they don't get a fair shake or comparison compared to oil and gas in terms of footprint, ecological impacts, and the like. But this thing with bats and things like Zika virus and things like that, I keep wondering if we are going to unleash an epidemiological crisis of biblical proportions by wiping out the #1 mosquito predator known to man. And I think we need to take a serious look at whether or not we should keep calling this green energy. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other requests to speak?
And that was our final speaker.
All right. Well, we will close the public comment period. We thank everybody for being here today that spoke. And we will move right into our departmental agenda. Item number 1, please.
Chair Lavanino and members of the board, departmental item number 1 is from Community Services. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding county employee commuter benefits options.
Yes. So what you want to do is take the next left.
Okay.
Greg's already here. He knows how to get to the county building. This is part of the commuter benefit. We're going to allow
There you go.
GPS. Good morning, Mr. Chapman.
Good morning, Chair Levin. Members of the board, it's nice to be here. I'd like to introduce Ashley Watkins and Sean Burns. These two are from the Sustainability Division, and they've done a lot of work on the commuter benefit survey. They'll be doing a report. With regards to the recommended actions we have here today, there are supportive enhancements that can be considered low-hanging fruit that we'd like you to consider. Maybe the board can give direction applicable to departments to pursue those. And then, however, there are other longer-term enhancements that would require HR, human resources, to conduct more research on costs and impacts on departments. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Ashley Watkins and Sean Burns.
Good morning, Chair Lavanino, members of the board. You may remember that back in December 11th, 2018, Sustainability Division staff provided a progress update on the Energy and Climate Action Plan that showed that we are not on track to meet our 2020 GHG reduction goals. As a result, the board directed staff to return with actions that could be taken to demonstrate leadership in reducing transportation-related transportation-related GHG emissions, which are the second largest driver of greenhouse gas emissions in our unincorporated area. General Services has returned and provided information on electrification of the county fleet, and this board briefing provides information on commuter benefits that can help reduce GHG emissions. The information and options for enhancements that are provided in this board briefing really reflect the work and feedback of a large group of entities, both the County Sustainability Committee, employee feedback through a countywide employee survey, interviews with department supervisors and managers, input from county human resources, and then finally the assistance and input of the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments Traffic Solutions, which helps local employers develop and implement commuter benefits programs. So commuter benefits are an important tool that employers can use to incentivize commute options other than driving alone, such as taking public transportation, walking or biking, participating in a carpool. And they can also promote the use of less less polluting vehicles like electric vehicles. Or they can promote not commuting at all by offering telework or alternative work week schedules such as the very popular 980. By reducing trips and the number of cars on the road, commuter benefits can not only reduce GHG emissions, but they can also reduce forms of air pollution and roadway congestion. As an added benefit, commuter benefits can also increase employer attractiveness and job satisfaction. We heard recently that department directors have expressed that retention, succession planning is one of their number one needs for 2019, so this is particularly important. And then finally, commuter benefits can also improve organizational resiliency, productivity during storms and other travel disruptions. When we did some department interviews with managers and supervisors, almost all of them expressed that having some employees who had access to remote capabilities helped work continue during the debris flow event and the Thomas Fire. So in spring 2018, the County Sustainability Committee partnered with Traffic Solutions to conduct a survey to try and better understand how employees are getting to work, what influences how employees commute, and what commuter benefits employees want. 926 employees responded, which is roughly 24% of our workforce. And employees most frequently cited a desire for increasing the existing transportation demand management vacation benefit and also scaling it, providing laptops for telework eligible employees, establishing flex hours to facilitate transit use and reduce time spent in traffic, as well as reduced cost transit passes and greater flexibility overall related to scheduling. What's sort of interesting is that these findings from the survey are really similar to a survey that was also conducted by the county and Traffic Solutions back in 2006. So employees, are somewhat consistent with what they're sort of wanting in terms of commuter benefits. So in the 2018 survey, you can see in this chart that employees who responded indicated that about 74% of them are currently driving alone to work, with carpooling and taking the bus being the next most frequent modes of commute. It's interesting to note that the way employees come to work sort of changes based on their work location. So, for example, staff working in downtown Santa Barbara had the lowest drive alone rates at 56%, while staff who traveled to Caye-Real reported driving alone at rates of 73%, and then Santa Maria commuters' drive alone rates were nearly 90%.
Supervisor Adam?
Do you know where all these people live of the 73%?
The survey did ask for information about where they live, yes.
And where is that?
Actually, I will get to another slide right after this that breaks out the actual commutes.
Okay.
So just, a couple of other things that we kind of thought were interesting from the survey were that, that the drive alone rates seem to indicate that factors such as access to parking, transit connectivity, safe walk or bike paths are really sort of influencing how people choose to come to work. So, for example, in downtown Santa Barbara, we think that, the lack of access to parking and the expense related to parking combined with the fact that there's more transit opportunities is what results in that lower drive alone rate. So also in 2018, the County Human Resources compiled the most frequent county home work locations. This chart uses that information and shows the number of southbound commuters and the distance they travel. So you can see the blue bar shows the number of people that travel a specific route, and then the red line shows the distance traveled in a one-way increment. So the highest number of commuters traveling south are located in Santa Maria, Lompoc, and Goleta. And if you look at Santa Maria and Lompoc alone, you've got nearly 600 employees who are traveling an average of 120 miles a day. Also, something interesting that came out of the survey was that employees who have long-distance commutes are more likely to use transit or carpool options, which sort of suggests that long-distance commuters might be more motivated to try alternative modes of transportation, such as taking the bus, to reduce costs associated with fuel and to also just reduce the stress of driving.
Supervisor Adam.
Okay, so back to the last slide where we had the 73.7 or 74% of drive loans. Do you know where they live?
We do. So that pulls together all of the people that responded to the survey, and we do have some information about zip codes that was collected via the survey.
Yeah, because the slide 7's not really responsive to that question.
We could certainly get you additional information that has the zip codes that were indicated in the survey.
Well, it won't be useful at that point. I mean, I think the point is we have a jobs housing imbalance that we all know about, and the people that live up here tend to drive themselves. I think that's going to be a really high percentage of the 74% that's coming from Lompoc and Santa Maria, and not so much from other places, because there's so many people that are coming in from Lompoc and Santa Maria, and it really points out that we should take every opportunity that we can. Last one that we were talking about was dispatch, to put stuff in the North County where the workforce is.
So yeah, I mean, looking at the number of responses, you can see that there are a significant number of employees. I think we said something like 600 that are in Santa Maria or Lompoc alone that are traveling south. So that's a big chunk of our workforce. We've got about, I think, 3,900 staff members right now, and that's with only a 24 response. So there's obviously more people that are living in North County that didn't potentially respond to the survey.
They say that I'm not sure, but the city government of Lompoc is taking the position that 6,000 people leave Lompoc every day to go to work in the South Coast.
That's probably true.
So that's a major fact that needs to be remedied at some point.
So the next slide shows northbound commuters and the distance that they travel. The highest number of commuters traveling northbound are located in Ventura County, traveling to Santa Barbara, with approximately 300 employees traveling on average 72 miles round trip in a day. While the commute in mileage is shorter than the northbound or than the southbound commute, the Department of Transportation estimates that there's about 20,000 people coming in from Ventura to Santa Barbara County every day, which results in these commuters having to face quite a bit of congestion during their commute. So the county does currently offer a number of commuter benefits to incentivize commute options other than driving alone, but there's currently low participation in almost all of the benefits offered. So we have had a TDM vacation, or Transportation Demand Management vacation bonus, in place that allows employees to earn up to 2 extra vacation days a year if they use a qualifying commute at least 80% of the days worked in a pay period. We also provide a $10 pre-tax contribution to those who use the bus fare, and then the county will match with $10 whatever the employee puts aside in pre-tax contribution. There's a free ride-sharing program that we offer where a county employee who commutes with at least one other county employee can apply for a parking permit for either the Garden Street lot or the admin lot. There's also 2 programs that offer guaranteed ride home for people who are using alternative commute modes and have an emergency. They have the option of getting a supervisor approval to use a motor pool vehicle, or SBCAG Traffic Solutions also has a free ride home program where they'll reimburse you for costs associated with a Lyft or a taxi. Alternative work week schedules, we have a board adopted policy for this, and this is really a standout amongst the benefits that we currently offer. The survey showed that roughly 35% of employees are utilizing alternative work weeks, such as the 980 or 410, where you're working longer hours and then you get every Friday or every other Friday off. We also have an existing policy for teleworking, which eliminates the need for trips to the work site altogether. In general, I would say, the low participation rates suggest that we need to better promote the benefits that we have now and consider some enhancements to make them a little bit more attractive as well, and potentially offer some new benefits. So commuter benefit, there's some different ways that we've categorized commuter benefits. We can raise visibility of existing benefits, enhance existing benefits, and then implement some new benefits. And then we provided some estimated budget impacts for what we thought some of these benefits would result in, but those really need to sort of be cross-checked, and HR needs to do some additional research on what those budget impacts will look like. So in terms of commuter benefits, we would suggest, based on the feedback that we received from the employee commuter benefits, that there's some low-hanging fruit things that we could consider just consolidating information on a single intranet and public-facing internet page. Right now, that information is sort of spread out across different websites or different department websites, and so it's sort of hard for people to be able to access that information. Also, just sort of updating and streamlining some of the forms, integrating commuter benefits into new employee orientation materials. Right now, HR has moved forward with having a monthly HR orientation, and that could be a great venue for us to really promote some of these benefits. And then finally, just offering an annual commuter benefit fair in coordination with the regular benefits fairs that we have. Employees also expressed a strong desire for enhanced IT support for remote work. So having departments consider defaulting to laptops upon replacement of tower computers would be a way to help promote that further. And then also another supportive enhancement is, reporting and monitoring, just sort of trying to raise the visibility of benefits by continuing to do an annual survey like the one that was done in 2018, bringing attention to commuter benefits by providing updates to the board. We also spoke with General Services about the potential to assign dedicated van pool or carpool spots at all county facilities. That seems like it would be a relatively low-cost item to implement. As I mentioned, employees also were interested in increasing the pre-tax contribution benefit. The existing benefit of $10 just doesn't seem to be enough to incentivize people to actually change their commute mode. We would also suggest expanding eligibility to include train and van pool. Those aren't included right now. It's specific to bus. Traffic Solutions also offers a subsidized van pool program. They will actually pay for the first year of a van pool as long as the employer agrees to a modest subsidy for the second year. I think any costs associated with that could be rolled into that pre-tax contribution if it is expanded to van pool and does get increased in terms of the amount that employees are employee match. Providing zero-emission vehicle bulk purchasing benefits to employees. General Services, as you know, has been directed to purchase additional electric vehicles for the fleet, and so we've spoken with them about expanding that purchasing to include having a discount for employees who might be interested in electric vehicles as well. Several departments and divisions are working together to retrofit the engineering courtyard, and they're going to be putting in a water-wise garden, and they have the option to add in some additional bike parking and bike maintenance facilities to replace the existing one that's there now. As I said from the survey, one of the things that employees are also interested in is the TDM vacation bonus and sort of changing that a bit. The survey showed that people cited this as one of the big ways that the county could incentivize alternative commute options. And so some of the suggestions were, again, to expand eligibility to include train and zero-emission vehicles, because those aren't included right now, and to also replace the 80% participation rate with a sliding scale. So a lot of employees expressed that they would like to try some different alternate forms of transportation, and that this could encourage them to do it, but they were hesitant to commit to the 80% because of things like emergencies or childcare issues. So having a sliding scale where they don't have to commit to a full 80% could help increase some participation. Also, increasing the vacation bonus from 2 days to 3 days could help drive some additional participation. Creating hoteling workstations at county and our partner organizations is also something that has some potential given how many people we have that are driving from locations like Ventura or from Santa Maria into Santa Barbara. There's been previous HR reports where they've looked into the potential of maybe utilizing shared workspace with Ventura County, and there did seem from that previous 2006 survey that there was at least 13% of the employee population that would be amenable to working from a remote site at least 1 day a week. Overall, just expansion of alternative work week schedules and teleworking. So when we did department interviews, teleworking is definitely something that departments have some concerns with related to, maintaining confidential information, concerns about productivity and ergonomics. We do have a pretty comprehensive existing board-adopted teleworking policy, but it does need some tweaks. It hasn't been updated since 2011, so it could probably use another round of legal review and to make sure that it complies with any sort of new regulations. We could also, there's been some examples from the city where they've implemented 980 work weeks. They close their offices every other Friday, and overall they've reported that customers actually like the longer service hours, and that they've been able to sort of mitigate any negative feedback with pretty aggressive campaign to just sort of make people aware of the changes. So overall, that completes our briefing on employee commuter benefits. Recommended actions are to receive and file this briefing and provide input as appropriate. As George mentioned, there may be some low-hanging fruit that the board feels comfortable with directing staff and applicable departments with pursuing, but other more comprehensive measures probably need to have the HR director return with their specific recommended actions so that there's some time to do some additional research on costs and confer with the affected departments. And then finally, the final recommended action is to determine that these actions are exempt from CEQA.
Thank you very much, Ashley. So questions of the board? Supervisor Adam?
Well, some thoughts. First of all, this points out the northbound, especially traffic, points out the need for executive housing in North County. You know, I've been asking for that for a long time, and I think we need to make sure that people don't have to drive up from Buellton or Santa Barbara even to run companies in Santa Maria, because there's nothing that they can get. Obviously, they can afford it if they're living in Buellton and coming to Santa Maria. And those are not too many houses, but those are executive positions, obviously, that they can afford to live up here closer to their workplace, but we've got a little bit of a shortage of that type of housing in the north. I also think that there's a possibility that you're misinterpreting the data, where you said that you need to create incentive for participation in some of these programs. And, you know, I think that what you're discounting too deeply here is that people like the freedom and flexibility of personal transportation. And freedom and flexibility have a very high intrinsic value, and it's difficult to replace that with money or other incentives, because it's really people's time. You know, people are giving up their time to participate in any kind of a public transportation scheme. And you know, you can't replace those human hours.
Supervisor Adams, through the chair, you're correct. That did come up in the survey, that one of the things that keeps people from using alternative commute modes is they like their freedom, and they have concerns.
Put a dollar on that. Put a dollar figure on that. It's very difficult, because, you know, if you want to go pick up your kids, or if you want to go to a store, it's not on the route of the public transportation, and it just doesn't. You know, it's a great thing to aspire to, but I really think that you have to realize that there's going to be some limitations in participation here to a great degree, just because people want the flexibility.
Yes, I mean, I think other things were people responded to the survey said that, you know, getting to loved ones in case of emergency was something that, you know, kept them from using alternative modes. I think it's really not going to be one thing that drives people to take an option other than driving alone. It's going to be sort of a combination of, that it's hard. So, lack of parking or expensive parking, coupled with an incentive that helps get them over the top. So those kind of two things combined together seem to be working to make people actually take some action. So for people in North County, obviously, driving 120 miles is tough when you've got a day of work ahead of you. So that's why I think we see people taking more alternative forms of transportation when they're coming from Santa Maria to downtown Santa Barbara.
Well, another incentive that you could offer is some kind of an emergency ride home.
They do that.
Have they? Okay. All right. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that keeps people from participating in these things, and I think will be there will be an upper limit on the level of participation that you can achieve, and I don't know what that will be.
Supervisor Adam, through the chair, I think you're right. Not everyone's going to participate. Some people have childcare issues. They need to leave a little earlier, so they can't take the bus. So I think it's just how much more can we get out of, how much more participation can we get out of them? Not everybody's going to participate.
Yeah, and then you really have to look at what you're spending,
Right.
and how much per GHG or ton of CO2 or whatever. I mean, got to get it back to some kind of a level that we can evaluate.
And I think that was part of the presentation, is take a look at this, come back and give you a report as well. This is a start, and we can do a cost-benefit analysis as well to that.
I think that would be really great to have that, because when APCD does these things, they do figure it out by the ton, so we should do that too.
Supervisor Hart?
Yeah, I agree with Supervisor Adam about the jobs, housing, and balance realities, and that's a real challenge that we need to address long term. But this is a different way to approach the folks who are potentially interested in doing something different, who have a financial incentive to do something different, but might not be aware of what is available and what options they have. I do think the most important thing that we could do, given that the size of the county workforce, is to have an employee transportation coordinator working full-time on this issue. It wasn't listed as one of the options, but if you don't have somebody who's responsible for this effort, if it is simply, pointing people toward a website, you overwhelm people with choices that don't apply to their circumstances individually. This has to be marketed on an individual basis to employees with solutions and alternatives that are relevant to them and their actual commute. It differs wildly depending on where they live and how far they're traveling and what circumstances their job involves. The simple things of encouraging people to use the train, for example. We have this new train service. Ridership is struggling. One of the big issues that I hear about is that people aren't able to start their day when they're on the train, and that if there's a way to work that out with human resources so that somebody can log into their computer when they're on the train, begin their work day. The schedule is less than ideal for county operations, but with some flexibility that could be enhanced. But my whole suggestion to you when you bring this back further is to do some really serious research into behavioral economics. There's a lot of work that's been done about this. This isn't a new area. Ride sharing promotion has been going on for more than 30 years. There are a lot of lessons learned, and then so many of them are counterintuitive. So having somebody who knows what they're doing in this regard, who has the authority of the CEO's office to really, get through to department heads and say this is a priority. We really need your employees to know about these alternatives and to begin to take action on an individual basis is the way you're going to leverage and get any kind of change. There's lots of organizations that push out this information passively and don't get any kind of results. And the organizations that do succeed do it the other way.
I have a couple questions. One is, how does the employee response on this compare to other employee surveys that we've done? 24% doesn't seem high, but I'm just curious if anybody has that answer.
The only thing I would have to compare it to would be the survey that was done in 2006, which I think was around 32%. So it was a little bit higher for that one.
What I'm worried about when we look at the numbers, when we're talking about 24% of the people, is I would feel that people that do ride the bus or do that do carpool or have this is something in their wheelhouse that they're really interested in are probably more apt to respond to this survey, which means that kind of skews our numbers, and our ridership is already low. So if I'm driving by myself and I'm not interested in this, I'm probably not going to respond to the survey. So, you know, when we do polling, we always look at different ways to look at numbers. And I think, you know, although this kind of looks bleak to me to start with, I think it could be even bleaker because people aren't responding that don't use the service. How do we know if we let's say you know, I think one of the takeaways is, well, let's increase the vacation payout. But how do you know you're not just increasing the benefit for the people that are already using this service and not incentivizing somebody else to join the service?
I think it's a valid point.
Okay. We'd have to figure
Mr.
out a way.
Chair,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one suggestion for making sure that it's an expansion is just prorating people who do it part-time. I mean, I think part of the problem is we're only incentivizing people who are all in. And most people who have kids or most people who are wanting to maybe save a little money from their commute or make the world a little bit better, they're not going to go 80% time, 4 days a week overnight. And so offering an incentive for people to do it 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, to me, is the way to expand participation without just simply piling on more benefits for the people who are already doing it, to your point.
Okay. The other thing I don't think we look at.
Chair Levin, if
Yes.
I can also address your question as well. We talked about internal, inherent bias in the people that are responding, but also note that 73% of the people that drove alone responded. So there may be some interest in
Right.
those folks.
Other question I have is, and I don't know how you even look at this, but you know, one of the main reasons I saw it's, quote, source of freedom and security, and that was brought up. But, you know, people also said that they are doing other things. They have other things that they need to do while they go to work, and they've, got to stop here, got to stop there, get groceries, do whatever. How do we know that, this would be very difficult to figure out, but you take the bus, you come home, you got to get in your car, go back, go to the grocery store. Is it actually saving a trip? Are we actually saving that trip? Or is the person that goes to work and then does number of stops on the way home, drops by the library, gets the groceries, and then goes home, picks kids up and goes home, is that person actually saving trips but is driving their own vehicle?
So I think that sort of depends on where that employee lives. So if you've got somebody from Santa Maria who drives to Santa Barbara and back, but then comes home and goes to the grocery store, I'd say you're still ahead of the game.
Right.
But if you're talking about somebody that, lives in Santa Barbara and
Right.
works in Santa Barbara, then it's a different story.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I also thought there was just another interesting thing is when we asked why they use active transportation and ride sharing, the smallest answer, the 4%, was because it was subsidized by the employer. So for us to add on to the subsidy seems counterintuitive to, but like, I don't know who was saying, Greg, a lot of these answers are counterintuitive, but I would have thought that the reason why people do it is because we are subsidizing it. But that was the lowest response. Number one was to save on gas and auto, and yeah, and so, and I guess my biggest question is, if I got interested in this, and I am interested in it, but I want to do it for the right reasons. So retention is very important to me because I saw in the report it costs somewhere between $35,000 and $65,000 to replace employees. But where I'm struggling with this is, and this isn't for you, Ashley, or for George, but maybe a bigger question is, so when you talk to people that aren't part of county government in the private sector and regular just Joe taxpayer citizen, they look at a county job as the gold standard. Like, oh my gosh, this person's working for the government. They got it made. The benefits are great. They got a pension. Everything's awesome. But then we don't retain people, and we have this drop off. And I don't remember what it was at the 5-year mark. It was a high percentage though, 30 or 40%, I think, after 5 years. And I'm trying to figure out why that disconnect is out there. And this might be a small piece of it, but I don't know if you care to weigh in on that, but it just seems like that I don't know if we're not educating our employees about all the benefits, not just rideshare program, but all the benefits they receive and what that actually all entails, the entire package. And I'd like to see, I think we've had it before, but why are people leaving? What is it? The travel? I drive to Santa Barbara once a week or twice a week, and I can't imagine doing it every day. That would be brutal. But is that what's driving people away? And would they be better off if they were on the Clean Air Express? I don't know, but I think we got to look at this also in a broader scope of retention and why are people leaving, and then you can kind of address some of these other things. But anyway.
I would respond in a couple of ways. I mean, I think if the county were to do just one thing, the education piece is huge. Having all this information consolidated in one intranet and one external, one intranet, so somebody could find it easily. When I first came to the county, I asked about teleworking and alternative work schedules because it was offered at all my previous positions, but I was told by my manager that, we don't do that at the county. So people are not aware of all of the benefits that we have. And I can say that Sean and I also were educated in this process and I didn't know about the, emergency ride home programs.
Right.
So that, I think the education piece is key. And then the second piece is, when you do research on things like teleworking and alternative work schedules, it kind of hits these two groups. So millennials who expect to be able to do teleworking and alternative work schedules, and then people that are close to retirement who are sort of sick of the rat race. And we heard this in a couple of the departmental interviews that there are some people that work with the county that ended up extending their career because of alternative work schedules and teleworking.
That's probably not the person I want to extend, though. I'd be happy with that person retiring when they get tired of working.
It's an issue of institutional knowledge, right?
And I think there's something about teleworking that I was just talked to about this morning, about better technology, I think my biggest concern would be, how do I know that person's working? And I think there's new technology that can follow that and track that and
I think
respond to that.
Chair Lavanya, and I think you have to know your employees as well and know the job. And there's some employees that will do well telecommuting and some that won't. And that's up to the manager to really determine.
Yeah. Supervisor Williams?
Well, I just wanted to, first of all, advocate. And do we have public comment, or should we? Can we go into,
these
into
questions,
comments?
and then we'll go to public comment. We have 3 speakers, and then we can come back for advocation.
Well, I guess I wanted to just delve a little bit more into your impression of the resistance to telecommuting. It seems like it's something that when I talk with rank and file employees, it's really a desire, and our percentage is kind of abysmally low in the 21st century, in the most tech-heavy, society that, on the globe. But it seems to me that there is some resistance from, either upper management or middle management about whether employee productivity can be maintained. I would argue that it could be enhanced when they're not spending an hour plus on the freeway each direction, but whether it can be adequately supervised. And I just wonder, do they know about the technologies out there where a supervisor can supervise work being done online, knows when people are logged in, what they're working on, knows the phone calls they're making? I mean, are they even aware of that technology out there? And in your opinion, would that deal with some of their hesitancy?
So, I mean, I think the hesitancy is associated with what Supervisor Lavanini was saying about productivity. There's some hesitation about being fair across the board to all employees that are supervised, by that particular manager, and how you manage that expectation. We didn't ask specifically about the technology question, but one thing that we did learn in some of this research is that different departments use different technology. Some use something called Go to My PC, but General Services' preferred method is to use NetMotion. So there could be some education needed around the options for accessing telework. I think, it is, if teleworking is something that the board is interested in, it does have to be sort of championed at the department level, because that's who currently signs off on teleworking proposals. But I think there has to be, maybe better education of managers on, the existing teleworking policy that we have, and how the policy can sort of mitigate some of the issues that supervisors have with regard to teleworking.
Chair Lavanini and Supervisors, I think that's exactly right. I think some of the issues are at the department level, but for good reason. And that's why we're asking the HR director to go back and also look at our existing telework policy. We were looking at it last night and prior to today, and there's some changes actually that probably need to be implemented, not only to perhaps make it clear, to clear guidelines of what is appropriate work for teleworking, but also some of the requirements about just even accommodations. I think the county is responsible for ensuring an ergonomic workplace. So if we allow people to telework, we would be responsible for ensuring an ergonomic workplace in their home. So there's different things that we would go to. So I think as part of your board action today, it's asking the HR director with the sustainability staff, but looking at their telework policy, it's from 2011, and to see what updates we should be making to it.
Very good. Supervisor Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I was going to.
Go ahead, Supervisor Williams.
I was just going to ask that question of Mona. Do you feel that, between your staff and HR, that it would be possible just to try to delve in, instead of try to tackle this at our whole institution, and I'm speaking specifically of telework, to try to determine a department singular that is well suited for this, and volunteer or voluntold them, and work with that department on the technological needs, the logistical needs, the other needs, to really see if that's possible in one department before scaling it to the rest of the institution. Is that a more achievable bite-size increment to handle?
Supervisor Williams, to the chair, I think that's a good idea to figure out, first of all, what policies need to be changed and then pilot it with the department. And I was talking to Mr. Chapchian basically and said I think his department would be great to pilot in.
I was voluntold, yes.
You are voluntold.
No, we volunteered.
And because you have a big range of generations in your workplace, you have a lot of millennials. Not all your staff could do it. Obviously, people work in the parks, but maybe your housing, your sustainability staff, they could pilot it, and particularly then talk to our departments about what lessons learned, how we need to change the policy. I think that would be important.
Okay, Supervisor Hartman.
Thank you. There are a couple of things that struck me about this, and one was how many employees for the county come from the north to the south. I always thought about this 20,000 that's coming from Ventura up, so that was a big surprise to me. If I remember from my service on the SB CAG board, the buses, the Clean Air Express, have the best rate payback, with the best ridership, and the question is, maybe we need more buses or more van pools coming down, and so that would be something to look at. The second thing I think is that flexibility is something we all value, and there's lots of different ways to get it. And certainly riding in your own car is one, but when you're blocked on the freeway in congestion, it doesn't feel very flexible. So I think Supervisor Hart's idea about can we allow people to telecommute from the train or the bus is a really good one. When does your workday start? And I believe telecommuting from home and from shared workspace. I wonder if the county, I know my office in Solvang, there's an area where people could work. There's offices that sit vacant because people are moving around. Could we use some of our own space, identify some, and at least in the pilot, explore whether those are spaces people could work from? I agree that it really does depend on the person, but people do learn to work from home, kind of a discipline, but they need space in their home to be able to close the door and go to work, and they have to have that right psychology. So those are just a few of the things. I'm also struck by Supervisor Hart's idea about hiring someone whose job this is, and I just wonder if we could coordinate perhaps with the cities to get, so it's not just us doing it, but we work together, and then we have a bigger pool actually to work from to create van pools, and maybe SBCAG could step up. And finally, we really need to get people on the train. And I don't know if there are added incentives, whether there's lotteries, whether, what does it take? I don't know, but I'd surely like to explore incentives that, again, we can coordinate with other employers and see what we can do.
Okay, very good. Let's go to public comment.
Chair Levanino and members of the board, we have 3 requests to speak, and we're going to begin in Santa Barbara with Kent Epperson, and then return back here in Santa Maria with Andy Caldwell. Kent?
Thank you, Chairman and Board of Supervisors. I just love this discussion. This is the world that I live in all the time, and I'm really appreciating the level of detail of the staff report, the hard work that your staff put into this report, and the fact that all of you up there are really grappling with this. So I have a number of just comments that I wanted to touch on. Great working with the staff on the commuter survey, and this is really what we do at Traffic Solutions, where we work hand in hand with employers to help them deal with this frustration of the long commute that so many people have. One important to note, just to emphasize again, the notation about the difference between the downtown Santa Barbara commuters versus the other campuses. The parking, the priced parking really is the big difference there. So we know that parking has a huge influence on people's travel behavior. Also, Supervisor Hart's comment about the one point of contact, that is something I've been advocating for the last 17 years since I've been at Traffic Solutions with the county. While Traffic Solutions and SBCAG can step up and we can help facilitate things between the cities and the county, what often happens is that we'll have a campaign or something we want to promote, and it takes a lot of work to work with all the various people that are involved in getting the word out to the employees. HR is very, very overtaxed and overworked, I think, and it's hard for them to fill that role. And then there's so many departments, and it boils down. So I really like that idea. I think a lot of this is about promoting. It's about keeping it in front of the employees' consciousness, and having that one point of contact will help us get our information out to all employees, and it will help that person get acquainted with the specifics of different commutes and different people that are trying to do the right thing. Point of clarification, the van pool program that was mentioned, the subsidized van pool program, that is a program that's tied in with the Linden and Casitas Pass project. It's a short-term program, so if you jump on it right away, we will pay half of that. You guys can pay half. Once that construction project is over, that draws to a close. However, as a reminder, we have several more phases to go on the 101 widening project, and we anticipate that something like this could continue in the future, but it really is designed for the south from Ventura to Santa Barbara commuters. I only have 17 seconds left. I wonder if there's any possibility I could have maybe another minute and a half or so.
We've got a really jammed up agenda today, but I'm going to go ahead and grant it.
Okay. Okay, I will be efficient here. I won't waste any time. So one thing that I noticed was not included in the staff report is you could perhaps introduce some sort of a prize giveaway, which would be very inexpensive. You could do it monthly, and considering how little employees are really taking advantage of your $10 tax incentive, I think you could get a lot for your money on that, and we can talk to your staff more about that. A number of employers do that. Also, bike challenges and commuter challenges, these do a huge, they're so effective in motivating employees. And then also just to kind of follow up on a comment about working while you're commuting, this is happening, regardless of whether HR benefits and companies know about it. People are working everywhere. They're working in the line at the grocery store, and they're certainly working on the bus or on the train if they're commuting on a regular basis. What would be nice is if you include in your telecommuting policies some element that acknowledges that and allows some sort of credit. Maybe you don't want to give one for one. Every minute that they're working counts towards their required 8 hours and 9 hours a day. But you could take credit for that, and I think it would go a long way to actually getting more people to use the train for one, and also the bus services. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to return here to Santa Maria with Andy Caldwell, to be followed by Roy Reed.
Chair Lavanino, members of the board, Andy Caldwell representing CoLab. I once had the opportunity to meet with the Speaker of the House, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, a leader with nobody following him is just a man on a walk. And I have to say that California keeps saying that in spite of what China, India, and Pakistan are not doing, that California is going to be the global leader in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And Santa Barbara County wants to be part of that leadership effort, but unfortunately your own county family and your own county staff aren't following, because they're just like the rest of America, where this rate's extremely low on almost all polling in terms of how important is this issue of climate change and reducing their carbon footprint. It rates usually at the bottom of most polls. And what I want to juxtapose to you is the difference in how you treat county workers versus the taxpayers. You use only carrots for county workers. In reality, I interpret this poll to say if you take away free parking in the county employee parking lots, you will increase carpooling. But you don't go there. But when the private sector, when the oil company comes up here, by golly, it's take the thumb screws to them. We're getting them down to zero greenhouse gas emissions. You don't incentivize the private sector. You don't tell an oil company, if you can get down to zero, we'll approve your project. If you go all solar, we'll approve your project. You don't incentivize. You put the thumb screws to them, and they still don't know if they're going to get approved. And a greenhouse gas ton of emissions in the oil field versus one in your own parking lot, it's the same ton of emissions. Why not incentivize the private sector? Why not put an ad out there that will pay private sector employees extra days of vacation if they'll carpool? Or we'll give them loans for Teslas. Instead of thinking that county family, we're free to spend taxpayer dollars for this good cause, as if the money belongs to you, and a greenhouse gas saved by you is different than one saved in the private sector. You know, the bottom line here is that there's a lot right across the street. You need to build more capacity or rent more capacity for people to work where they live. I've been saying that for over 10 years. For over 10 years. You need a satellite campus in Ventura, and you need a larger campus in Santa Maria and a larger one in Lompoc, where people can afford to live. You talk about hiring a staff person, no offense. What does Traffic Solutions do? What do they do? Who pays them, and what do they do? I've heard about Traffic Solutions for decades, and I never could quite figure out Who are they? Who funds them? And what do they do? And why aren't they acting as a staff person for you on this issue? Why weren't they making this presentation? Because they're supposedly the experts are going on now for decades. So I would really like you to take a step back and look at all greenhouse gas emissions are equal in terms of saving the planet, and take the blinders off in terms of sticks and carrots, sticks for the private sector, carrots for your own workers. Thank you.
And our final speaker is Roy Reed.
Hi, my name is Roy Reed, Chair Lavanino, and members of the board. I'm not used to having a whole 3 minutes to speak, so I appreciate it. Usually we're getting one. But I have to say, I spent 30 years in the medical industry. I and my employees spent a great deal of time in our cars, commuting everywhere. I spent a great deal of time in LA and the Bay Area, a lot of time at major medical centers. And all those major medical centers, UCLA, Cedars-Sinai, San Francisco General, they mirror the same problem your employees are facing. The area where they work is remote from where they live because there's not adequate housing near their center of work. That problem is even exacerbated in Santa Barbara County by a long-standing legacy of resistance to growth and development in the South County. So that's the result you're looking at here, and I applaud your efforts in trying to address that and mitigate that for your employees. But this is also not restricted to county employees. I would submit the entire workforce in the Santa Barbara area faces much of that. My most direct experience is with Cottage Hospital. You go to Cottage Hospital, I challenge you to find a nurse who lives in Santa Barbara. They live Lompoc, Santa Maria, Ventura. So again, a very complex issue. I applaud your efforts to mitigate that, but I think I would suggest another thought. When you were asked to rule on and address housing developments in the South County, not high-density fill-in projects, but single-family homes at affordable prices, the workforce, your workforce, would like to live in, look at that a little more favorably. Final point I'd like to make, I most generally appear here addressing petroleum development projects. One of the objections that surfaced lately from those in opposition is, where are these mitigation funds going to go? Are they going to be used at some remote site that we can't verify? I would think in the future, whatever solution you arrive at for your employees will require funding. So perhaps some of the mitigations from the oil projects seeking approval in the county would be an excellent, very visible and area of local benefit to be applied. So thank you very. One last caveat: if you think about switching to all electric vehicles, given our state's current power grid, where most of the energy is produced by fossil fuel, getting them an electric car is only removing the source of emissions from the vehicle to the power plant. So I'd recommend hybrids. Last point. An employee from city of Santa Barbara lives near me. He drives a low-emission vehicle. A couple of friends come and they carpool every day. So it seems like they may have a little bit of advice you could look to in solving this. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Is that all of our public speakers?
That was our final speaker.
Okay, I'll close the public comment period. Go back to Supervisor Williams. Look like he's ready to pontificate.
Well, first of all, I want to appreciate Mr. Lavanino's office. Both, I think, my staff and your staff started working on this, and then I want to appreciate community development for doing the survey and the even more in-depth and harder work of piecing together all our incentives and making some recommendations. I think there are some good recommendations there. First of all, to some of the speakers, I think it is absolutely true, and it bothers me as much as it bothers you that for some reason people in our county, they get really excited about carbon emissions when it's coming from an oil company, but they don't get as excited about it when it's coming from their own cars. And to me, that's That's a logical inconsistency. We should be just as urgent and just as vehement about reducing from ourselves as we are about reducing from other people's sources. And electric vehicles actually are a massive reduction in that regard. Even though we have a decent amount of natural gas still on the grid, the amount of hydro, the amount of solar, the amount of wind, and yes, the 10% nuclear we still have on the grid make it so use of an electric car is a massive reduction of GHG over a gas-powered and even over a hybrid. I do think, back to the subject at hand, we've got to go through and do these low-hanging fruit. I mean, the raising the visibility of existing benefits is low cost. The enhancing current benefits is low cost unless it's massively subscribed, right? I mean, I think either, if you don't like this, either you think it's not going to work or it's too expensive. But you can't have it both ways, because it's only expensive if it works, right? We only spend this stuff if massively more people take advantage of these benefits. And so I personally believe that progress is probably going to be incremental, but it's important to take the step. And so even if folks don't want to pay the amount for a $50 as opposed to the $10 incentive we have now, we should be going part way, do a $25 incentive, and we definitely need to expand it to train and carpool and other uses. I mean, I scratch my head at how much hope we've put on this commuter rail without supporting it with our actual actions. We've thrown money at it, but we haven't actually tried to make it work for our employees. And then the TDM vacation bonus, I'm much more attached to the idea of allowing people to get the incremental benefit. I think that there are commuters in our workforce out there that would like to carpool 1 or 2 days a week, or maybe even 3 days a week, or want to take a train, but they need a little bit of the incentive to push them over. The incentive, I think, is more about getting them in the door, right? And I think, to Mr. Adams' point, this is about freedom. In this day and age, people are increasingly multimodal if they have the ability to do so, meaning people aren't going to necessarily use the same mode of transport every day. And I think that's borne out by what we see in the numbers and the downtown site. And I don't think that people who work downtown are inherently more virtuous than the people who are working at our other job sites. I think they have more transportation options, and they have more positive and negative incentives. And it shows us that it can work if this is reflective. And I think it's, to Mr. Lavanino's point, it's a question of how reflective, but it's at least somewhat reflective that we have much more higher participation rates in the downtown. Then it means that our employees will take advantage if we give them the incentive. So I strongly believe that we should be investing in all of the recommended actions in raise visibility of existing benefits and enhance current benefits, and that we should pursue the subsidized van pool while we can, and ask HR and our CEO to work on the adoption of teleworking and alternative work week schedules. And I would also support Mr. Hart's proposal for a coordinator, but of course we should, like these things, at least think of it during our budget deliberations as well.
Okay. So it's all been said, apparently. So
Chair Levenine and Supervisors, I think Supervisor Williams has talked about some low-hanging fruit that we will look at. I'm in agreement with a lot of those things. I think some of the benefits that CSD put up in the cost, some are overstated and some are understated. So that's why we want HR to go back and talk to the departments and find out what some of the issues are. I think the board, there's a lot of great ideas. We just need to prioritize short, medium, long term of what we want to do and costs. So I think these are all great things. We just have to prioritize what's the most important because we can't do everything at once. I think Supervisor Williams said this will be incremental, but there are definitely some things we can do to move the ball forward. As far as I'm concerned, there's not a lot of greenhouse gas emission savings, as the report shows, but we should be having modern commuter green benefits for our employees, and that's what I'm interested in doing. And so that's what we're going to be looking at.
Okay, so the recommended actions were to receive and file, have this come back to us with costs, benefit analysis, and within 90 days, and that this is exempt from CEQA. So can I get a motion to those with direction as was given?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Can I get a roll call, please?
Can I ask, I mean, substantively, does that mean that we would be pursuing the visibility of existing benefits and the enhancement of current benefits and moving forward on some of the new examination of some of the new benefits like teleworking?
Supervisors, through the chair, I think I will work with the CSD department, as we've said, to tell them to look at a pilot program. I think that's a good idea, but we do want to make sure our telework policies are adequate to address some of the issues that we think we may be facing. That one, the low-hanging fruit about improving visibility, putting the information together, we can do that working with HR and our IT department, putting it someplace that's easy and accessible for our employees. As far as enhancing the benefits, we'd like to come back to the board about what that might mean in the costs.
And also with that, how would that be tracked? That seems, I just want to make sure that that's something that we can get a handle on with existing personnel, so that if we had a sliding scale, is that turned in like mileage, or how that whole system would work? Anyway, Supervisor Adam.
Okay, so the confirmation is, so you'd return with the cost confirmation of the raising visibility of existing benefits under the board letter, enhance current benefits, and two of the new benefits outlined, the van pool and the teleworking for one department.
Supervisor Williams, the chair, yes. And in the meantime, we will look at how we can make sure the visibility is improved on a website, or so employees can access information more readily.
Great. Okay.
Supervisor Adam.
Well, I just think that the benefits in this thing are going to be de minimis, and I'm going to support it right now just because we're talking about it. But don't anybody get the idea that I'd be in favor of this when it comes back for a final.
Okay. And as part of this recommendation of what we're coming back with, and this is just something I would like to see in the future, as a future item down the road, is the question I brought up earlier is about retention, and I don't know if we have a survey that's current. But I'm not sure how difficult that would be to get that information from people of, why are they thinking of leaving, why have they left, and what our current retention numbers look like. So, all right, with that, we have a motion and a second. Let's get a roll call.
Mr. Williams? Aye. Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mr. Adam? Chair Lavanino?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Mr. Gazzoni, we're heading to closed session.
Chair and Supervisors, today the board is agendized for two items of conference with labor negotiators. The first concerns United Domestic Workers of America, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 3930. The second is unrepresented employees, managers, and executives. Human Resources estimates about a half hour for total for both.
Okay, very good. We will adjourn to closed session. Yeah, just give it to me. All right. We'd like to call back to order this meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Gazzoni, can we get a report from closed session?
Chair, in closed session today, the board considered 2 matters of conference with labor negotiators. The first was United Domestic Workers of America. The second was unrepresented employees, managers, and executives. There are no reportable actions.
Okay. I will like to adjourn this meeting to Tuesday, May 21st in Santa Barbara.